There exists a peculiar alchemy in stories about hidden identities, the moment when masks fall and truth detonates through carefully constructed lies. My Sister is the Warlord Queen, operates entirely within this combustible space, where a woman commanding trillion-dollar war chests and entire special forces networks walks into her sister's engagement party dressed as a janitor, absorbing mockery like rainfall. The premise isn't novel. We've seen powerful figures disguised, underestimated, vindicated. But this 2025 short drama, led by Samantha Drews as Catherine Blackwood, asks something more dangerous than what happens when she reveals herself. It asks, what does it cost to be simultaneously invisible and omnipotent? The Blackwood sisters, Catherine and Grace, were abandoned by their parents when childhood was still tender enough to break from such abandonment. This foundational wound shapes everything that follows. Catherine didn't just raise herself, she raised Grace, became mother, father, protector, provider, while the world continued its indifferent rotation. The film establishes this history not through exposition dumps, but through the texture of their reunion. When Catherine arrives at Grace's engagement to Tony Grant, she comes directly from an undercover mission, still wearing the janitor's uniform that served as camouflage. She hasn't changed clothes, hasn't prepared a presentation of herself. This choice speaks volumes about priority. Grace's happiness supersedes Catherine's image. Duty outweighs dignity. But the Grant family, Tony, his sister-in-law Allison, and the extended clan of social climbers and wealth hoarders, see only the uniform. They see a janitor who dared enter their domain, and they respond with the cruelty that class privilege teaches, ridicule sharp enough to cut, but calibrate it to avoid blood witnesses can see. The engagement party becomes a coliseum where Catherine's humility is mistaken for weakness, her silence for submission. Every insult lands, every dismissive glance registers. The drama makes us watch this degradation in real time, and it's excruciating precisely because we know what they don't. We hold the secret of her identity like a grenade, waiting for someone to pull the pin. Then betrayal arrives, not gradually but catastrophically. Tony Grant, the man Grace planned to marry, to build a life with, turns his cruelty toward her. The specifics of this betrayal vary across retellings, but the emotional mathematics remain constant. The person Grace trusted most becomes the weapon that wounds deepest, and Catherine watches. The Warlord Queen who has commanded armies, who holds the power to ruin nations, watches her sister's heart shatter in real time. This is the pressure point where the drama's entire architecture pivots. Catherine came to celebrate. She absorbed humiliation for Grace's sake, but watching Grace suffer crosses a threshold that activates something primal. The revelation of Catherine's true identity functions as the drama's emotional detonation. She doesn't simply state who she is. She dismantles the entire social hierarchy that enabled the cruelty. When the Grants discover that the janitor they mocked commands resources beyond their imagination, that her influence could erase their social standing with a single phone call, the power dynamic doesn't just shift, it inverts completely. Those who stood tallest shrink. Those who laughed loudest go silent. Samantha Drews, in a performance that balances restraint with barely contained fury, transforms from punching bag to reckoning. Her Catherine doesn't gloat. She doesn't need to. The revelation itself is vengeance enough. What makes this premise emotionally compelling isn't the gotcha satisfaction of seeing bullies face consequences, though that provides visceral pleasure. The deeper hook is watching a woman who has sacrificed everything for her sister. Anonymity, safety, the possibility of a normal life, finally claims space for her own anger. Catherine spent the entire party invisible by choice, protective camouflage for Grace's happiness. But when that protection fails, when Grace suffers despite Catherine's sacrifice, something fundamental changes. The Warlord Queen stops hiding, and the world remembers why hiding was mercy. The drama promises viewers this transformation, from invisible to undeniable, from enduring to avenging, from protector who absorbs blows to warrior who returns them. It's a Cinderella story written in blood and power, rather than glass slippers and fairy godmothers. The emotional contract is simple and devastating. Watch someone punished for humility receive vindication through revelation. Every viewer who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or mocked for their appearance while holding hidden depths feels this story in their bones. It's wish fulfillment, yes, but wish fulfillment that speaks to something painfully real, the exhaustion of hiding your power to make others comfortable, and the catharsis of finally stopping. My Sister is the Warlord Queen, also operates as a meditation on sisterhood under extreme pressure. Grace represents the dream that Catherine's sacrifices purchased: education, social mobility, the chance at conventional happiness. Catherine became the warlord so Grace could become the bride. This division of labor between siblings, one fights the dragons, one lives in the castle, creates an asymmetry that the drama explores with surprising nuance. Grace doesn't know the full extent of what Catherine has done, the bodies buried and deals brokered to create the illusion of normalcy. And Catherine has kept it that way intentionally, building a wall between Grace and the violence that funds her life. When that wall comes down, when Grace sees her sister not as humble caretaker but as ruthless queen, the relationship has to reorganize itself around this new truth. The engagement party setting is narratively brilliant. It's a celebration of futures and promises, the moment when two families merge and two lives supposedly begin. But it's also performance theater, where everyone wears their best mask, where social hierarchies are reinforced through seating charts and toast order, and who gets acknowledged versus ignored. Dropping a warlord queen into this environment, disguised as its lowest status participant, creates a natural pressure cooker. Every rule of social engagement becomes a weapon wielded against Catherine, and then, post-revelation, becomes evidence of the wielder's foolishness. The setting transforms from celebration to trial to execution, ground as the drama progresses. The promise this drama makes is fundamentally about justice, not legal justice, but the emotional justice of being seen. Catherine has been seen by enemies on battlefields, by subordinates in command centers, by world leaders in negotiation rooms. But she hasn't been seen by the people in this room, at this party, celebrating her sister. They looked at her uniform and concluded the story. The drama's central pleasure is watching their conclusion dissolve when confronted with reality. It's the satisfaction of "you should have looked closer" made manifest. Beneath the power fantasy runs a current of genuine pain. Catherine chose invisibility. She could have arrived in formal wear, announced her status, basked in recognition. But she chose the janitor's uniform, chose to come straight from work, chose function over form. This choice speaks to someone who has internalized a hierarchy of value, where her sister's happiness ranks above her own dignity. That's not strength. That's survival strategy calcified into identity. The drama doesn't just celebrate Catherine's power, it mourns the conditions that taught her to hide it. A woman commanding trillions should never have to pretend to be powerless to attend a family party. The fact that she does reveals something broken in the system surrounding her. What lingers from this premise is the question of cost. Catherine will destroy the grants. She will make them regret. But what does it cost her to finally unleash the power she's kept leashed? Does revealing herself as the Warlord Queen protect Grace? Or does it drag Grace into a world Catherine spent years trying to shield her from? The premise promises catharsis, but underneath that promise runs the question about whether vindication and protection can coexist, whether the sister who saves Grace might also be the sister who ruins her by revealing truths Grace never wanted to know. We watch My Sister is the Warlord Queen for the moment when Catherine stops pretending. We watch for the Grant family's faces when they realize what they've done. We watch for the satisfaction of seeing humility rewarded and cruelty punished. But we also watch to see what happens after, when the mask is gone and the truth sits exposed in the wreckage of a party that was supposed to be about joy. The drama promises us transformation, vindication, and sisterhood, tested by revelation. It promises that power hidden doesn't disappear. It accumulates, waiting for the moment when hiding ends and reckoning begins. Catherine Blackwood exists in a state of psychological compartmentalization that would exhaust lesser individuals. The Warlord Queen, who commands special forces networks, who sits atop a trillion-dollar war chest, who makes decisions that reshape geopolitical realities. This person shares psychic space with the abandoned child who raised her sister alone after their parents disappeared. These identities don't reconcile. They coexist through sheer force of will and carefully maintain separation. Understanding Catherine requires understanding how someone builds a self sturdy enough to contain such contradictions without collapsing. The core wound is abandonment, but not the simple abandonment of neglect. Catherine and Grace were left by people who were supposed to stay parents, whose departure created a void where family should exist. For Grace, young enough to be protected from the full weight of this, the wound is buffered by Catherine's intervention, but Catherine absorbs the impact directly. She doesn't have the luxury of being a child when her parents leave because someone has to be the adult for Grace. The abandonment doesn't just hurt Catherine, it converts her into something else entirely. Childhood ends the moment she becomes responsible for another life. It's a choice that reveals her hierarchy of values. Grace's celebration is time-sensitive. Her own presentation is not. Catherine has trained herself to deprioritize her own needs so reflexively that it operates below conscious thought. She doesn't choose to sacrifice her dignity by wearing the uniform. She simply doesn't register her dignity as relevant to the calculation. This is someone who has stripped herself down to pure function in service of protection. But the Janitor disguise operates on multiple psychological levels. On the surface, it's undercover work. Catherine's role as Warlord Queen apparently involves missions that require her to blend into invisible service class positions. Yet there's something revealing about her comfort in this disguise, her willingness to extend it into her personal life. Catherine has become someone who finds safety in invisibility. Being underestimated is a tactical advantage in her professional life, yes, but it has metastasized into a deeper pattern. She doesn't want to be seen. Being seen means being known, and being known means vulnerability. The Warlord Queen armor is impenetrable. The Janitor uniform is camouflage. Neither is truly her, which means she's never truly exposed. The Grant family's mockery triggers something specific in Catherine's psychology. She's been underestimated before. Every successful woman in male-dominated power structures knows this particular degradation. But this is different. These people are humiliating her in front of Grace, weaponizing social hierarchies to diminish her at a celebration she came to honor. The insults themselves are almost irrelevant. Catherine has endured worse in conflict zones and negotiation rooms. What cuts is the context that she chose vulnerability by coming in the Janitor uniform, and that choice is being punished. She offered humility and received contempt. For someone whose entire psychology is built around protecting her sister, watching her protective sacrifice become the vehicle for her humiliation creates a cognitive dissonance that's almost unbearable. Wah! Yet Catherine endures. This is crucial to understanding her internal architecture. She has the power to stop the mockery instantly by revealing her identity, but she doesn't. She absorbs blow after blow, insult after insult, because ending it would mean making Grace's engagement party about Catherine's power, rather than Grace's happiness. The Warlord Queen subordinates herself completely to the protective sister role. This capacity for self-subordination might look like strength, but psychologically, it's more complicated. Catherine has built an identity where her own pain doesn't register as reason enough to act. Only Grace's pain crosses that threshold. When Tony Grant betrays Grace, everything changes. The betrayal's specifics matter less than its psychological impact on Catherine. She has spent the entire party managing her own humiliation to preserve Grace's joy. She has calculated that her dignity is an acceptable sacrifice for her sister's happiness. But the betrayal reveals this calculation was meaningless. Grace's happiness was never secure, and Catherine's sacrifice purchased nothing. This is the moment when Catherine's protective psychology encounters its limits. She cannot protect Grace from heartbreak. Her power, vast as it is, cannot prevent the person Grace chose from wounding her. The shift from enduring humiliation to revealing identity isn't about revenge, though revenge is certainly present. It's about the collapse of Catherine's primary coping mechanism. If she can't protect Grace through invisibility and sacrifice, then invisibility and sacrifice serve no purpose. The Janitor disguise fails at its fundamental objective, keeping Grace safe and happy. So Catherine discards it, not because the mockery finally became intolerable for herself, but because the strategy itself proved worthless. The Warlord Queen emerges, not from wounded pride, but from failed protection. This distinction is psychologically vital. Catherine's identity revelation isn't, "I'm powerful, and you should fear me." It's, "My sister is suffering, and you caused it, and now you will understand what that costs." She isn't a warrior who happens to have a sister. She's a sister who became a warrior because protection demanded it. Every tactical decision, Every ruthless choice, every accumulation of power, traces back to that initial moment of abandonment when a child decided another child needed protection and built herself into a weapon sufficient to provide it. Grace functions as Catherine's psychological anchor, the one relationship untainted by power dynamics and strategic calculation, or so Catherine believes. But this belief contains a fundamental contradiction that the drama exposes. By hiding her true identity from Grace, by maintaining the fiction of humble circumstance while secretly commanding vast power, Catherine has built their relationship on asymmetric information. Grace loves a sister she doesn't fully know. Catherine protects a sister who doesn't understand what that protection costs or requires. When the revelation comes, it doesn't just shock the Grant family. It reorganizes Catherine and Grace's entire relationship around a truth that changes the meaning of everything that came before. Catherine's psychology is also shaped by the gendered nature of her power. The title, Warlord Queen, is deliberately contradictory. Warlord implies masculine military force, Queen implies feminine sovereignty. Catherine occupies both positions simultaneously, which requires navigating social systems that don't have frameworks for women who command violence. The Janitor disguise is gender-conforming in ways that her actual role is not. Society has spaces for invisible women in service positions. It struggles with women who command armies. By alternating between these personas, Catherine navigates hostility that would be untenable if permanently visible in her true role. The internal conflict that drives Catherine isn't between power and humility, though those forces are present. It's between the self that protects and the self that was never protected. She built the Warlord Queen identity to ensure Grace never experienced the abandonment and vulnerability that shaped Catherine's childhood. But in doing so, she sentenced herself to permanent vigilance, permanent strength, permanent inability to be vulnerable. Catherine doesn't know how to be weak because Grace needs her to be strong. She doesn't know how to need protection because she's too busy providing it. The psychology is a closed loop where Catherine's trauma creates Grace's safety, and Grace's safety requires Catherine's continued trauma. When Catherine finally reveals herself and begins dismantling the Grant family's social standing, the satisfaction is real but incomplete. Yes, they deserve consequences. Yes, their suffering is just punishment for cruelty. But Catherine is also unleashing the violent, ruthless side of herself that she's kept hidden from Grace. The Warlord Queen isn't just powerful, she's dangerous, capable of destroying lives without hesitation. Grace is about to see this version of her sister, perhaps for the first time. And Catherine knows, on some level, that this revelation will change how Grace sees her forever. The protective sister and the ruthless queen can't occupy the same space in Grace's understanding. Catherine is choosing vindication over Grace's continued innocence, which violates her own primary psychological drive. This suggests that Tony's betrayal doesn't just hurt Grace, it breaks something in Catherine. Her entire identity structure is organized around keeping Grace safe and happy. When that fails, despite all her power and sacrifice, Catherine experiences a fundamental psychological collapse. The rules she's lived by, stay invisible, protect Grace, sacrifice yourself, maintain separation between your worlds, all prove insufficient. So she abandons them, not because she wants to, but because they failed. The identity revelation is Catherine admitting that her protective strategy was always inadequate, that power hidden is power that couldn't prevent the person she loves most from being hurt. What emerges is a portrait of someone who has weaponized herself so thoroughly in service of protection that she's lost access to the vulnerable self underneath the armor. Catherine doesn't know who she is when she's not protecting Grace or commanding forces. The drama's central psychological tension is whether she can reclaim personhood beyond function, whether the Warlord Queen, who has made herself into a tool for her sister's safety, can become a person with her own needs, her own pain, her own right to be protected. The answer isn't clear. Catherine has spent so long as armor that removing it might reveal there's nothing left inside, just the wound of that original abandonment that never healed because she never had time to heal it, too busy ensuring Grace didn't carry the same wound. The Blackwood sisters' relationship is built on an asymmetry that can't sustain equilibrium. Catherine knows everything about Grace's life, while Grace knows almost nothing about Catherine's truth. This isn't simple secrecy. It's architectural inequality, where one sister has constructed the other's entire reality while remaining invisible within it. Grace lives in a world that Catherine built. The education, the opportunities, the social position that enabled an engagement to someone like Tony Grant. But Grace experiences it as her own achievement rather than her sister's gift. Catherine has deliberately crafted this illusion, preferring Grace's independence and self-confidence over gratitude that would reframe their relationship around debt. When Catherine arrives at the engagement party, Grace's reaction is telling. She's happy to see her sister, certainly, but there's no awareness that Catherine came directly from dangerous work, no understanding that the janitor's uniform represents anything other than perhaps financial struggle. Grace has been protected so completely from Catherine's actual life that she can't read the signs. This protection is Catherine's victory and her tragedy. She succeeded in giving Grace normalcy, but that normalcy requires Grace's ignorance of the violence and power that funded it. The sisters exist in different realities that only partially overlap, meeting in a narrow space where Catherine performs simplicity and Grace accepts it as truth. Grant, family's treatment of Catherine reveals how social hierarchies weaponize visibility and invisibility. Tony, his sister-in-law Allison, and the extended family see Catherine's janitor uniform and conclude the story. Grace is marrying up. Her family is beneath them. This shabby sister is an embarrassment to be tolerated and mocked. They perform class superiority through every interaction, using politeness as a blade that cuts while maintaining deniability. When they insult Catherine, they do it with smiles, with jokes that carry venom wrapped in humor. This is cruelty that knows how to avoid witnesses, that operates in the space where intent can be denied even as impact devastates. What makes their behavior particularly grotesque is the targeting of Catherine in front of Grace. They're not just asserting superiority over Catherine. They're teaching Grace where she came from, reminding her that marriage to Tony represents escape from people like her sister. The mockery functions as social instruction. This is what you're leaving behind. This is what you should be embarrassed by. This is the poverty you're transcending through this union. They want Grace to feel ashamed of Catherine, to distance herself, to demonstrate that she's worthy of joining the Grant family by rejecting the Blackwood origins. Grace's response to this mockery is the drama's most painful undercurrent. She doesn't defend Catherine with the ferocity the moment demands. She's caught between loyalty to her sister and desire to preserve the celebration, between family bonds and the new family she's joining. Her hesitation, understandable, human, profoundly inadequate, is the moment when Catherine realizes that protection has created distance. Grace loves her, certainly, but Grace doesn't see the mockery as the emergency Catherine does, because Grace doesn't understand what Catherine has sacrificed to be in this room. The inequality of knowledge creates inequality of response. Tony Grant's betrayal of Grace operates as the relationship's catastrophic test. The specifics vary across retellings, but the emotional structure remains. The man Grace chose to marry reveals himself as unworthy in a moment public enough to humiliate her as thoroughly as his family humiliated Catherine. This parallelism is crucial. Grace now experiences what Catherine absorbed, the public degradation in front of people who are supposed to care. For the first time, the sisters occupy the same emotional territory, both wounded by the same family's cruelty. But Catherine's response to Grace's pain reveals the fundamental dynamic between them. Catherine doesn't comfort first. She acts. The Warlord Queen emerges not to soothe Grace's heartbreak, but to punish those who caused it. Catherine's love language is protection through power, security through fear. She doesn't know how to simply hold her sister and let her cry. She knows how to make sure the people who hurt her sister understand what they've done and fear ever doing it again. This response is loving and terrifying in equal measure. Grace is protected, yes, but by a force that operates beyond normal human scale. When Catherine reveals her identity, Grace's world reorganizes around information she never had. The humble sister who scraped by was actually a warlord queen commanding trillions. Every memory recontextualizes. Every moment of Catherine's apparent struggle was performance or actual sacrifice to fund Grace's life. The sister Grace knew was real and simultaneously fiction. This revelation could strengthen their bond, Grace understanding the depth of Catherine's love, or fracture it permanently. Because Catherine never asked Grace if she wanted this kind of protection, never gave her the chance to say, "Don't sacrifice yourself for me." Catherine decided unilaterally what Grace needed and built an entire double life to provide it. The secondary relationships in the drama function as mirrors and inversions of the sisterly bond. Allison Grant, Tony's sister-in-law, represents what sisterhood looks like when built on social positioning rather than love. She defends family status, not family members. Her loyalty is to hierarchy, not individuals. When Catherine's identity emerges, Allison's entire relational framework collapses because it was always about power alignment, never about genuine connection. She mocked Catherine when Catherine seemed weak. She'll grovel when Catherine's power becomes visible. This transactional relationship exposes what's extraordinary about the Blackwood sisters. Their bond survived abandonment, poverty, and vast inequality of circumstance because it was never conditional on status. The dynamic between Catherine and Tony Grant crystallizes class and gender tensions. Tony sees Grace as a possession to acquire, Catherine as an embarrassment to tolerate. His masculinity is built on social dominance, on marrying a woman whose family he can look down upon, whose sister he can mock safely. When Catherine reveals herself as vastly more powerful than him, it's not just a status reversal, it's an emasculation. His entire identity structure depends on being the dominant force, the provider, the superior party. Catherine's power makes him irrelevant, which is psychologically unbearable for someone who needs to be above. The relationship between the Blackwood sisters and their absent parents haunts the drama without those parents ever appearing. Abandonment is the ghost at every table, the wound that shaped everything. Catherine became the Warlord queen because she had to become parent, protector, provider when their actual parents left. Grace was able to dream of normal life, education, career, marriage, because Catherine took on the burden of survival. The absent parents created a void that Catherine filled by destroying her own childhood, and now that sacrifice is visible in every interaction between the sisters. They're not siblings in the traditional sense. They're survivor and protector, one who was shielded and one who became the shield. What makes this relationship structure psychologically complex is that Grace never asked to be protected this way. Catherine decided, as children do when faced with impossible circumstances, that Grace needed to be saved and Catherine would do the saving. But children's decisions become adults' realities, and now both sisters live with consequences of a choice made by a terrified child who had no other options. Grace owes Catherine everything, her education, her opportunities, possibly her life. But she also lost the chance to have a sister instead of a guardian, lost the possibility of protecting Catherine in return, lost the equality that makes relationships sustainable rather than hierarchical. The engagement party setting forces all these relationship dynamics into collision. Catherine's protective love, Grace's unknowing dependence, the Grant family's cruelty, Tony's betrayal, the absent parents' shadow all converge in a single evening that strips away every careful illusion and leaves only raw truth. What emerges is messy and painful and utterly human. Sisters who love each other across a chasm of unequal knowledge and unequal sacrifice, trying to figure out if their bond can survive the revelation of what it actually is versus what they believed it to be. The janitor's uniform operates as the drama's central symbol, carrying meanings that shift and multiply as the narrative progresses. Initially, it's pure disguise. Catherine's undercover work requires invisibility, and service workers are perhaps the most invisible people in spaces of wealth and power. But the uniform's significance deepens when Catherine chooses not to change it before entering Grace's celebration. In this context, it becomes a statement about priority. The work of protection supersedes the performance of status. Catherine, wearing the janitor uniform to her sister's engagement party, says, "I came directly from keeping you safe, and I won't apologize for looking like someone who works." Yet, the uniform also represents a kind of psychological armor. Yes, it makes Catherine visible as a janitor, but that very visibility creates invisibility of her true self. People see the uniform and stop looking, make assumptions, and stop thinking. Catherine can wear this uniform and be completely safe from recognition, completely protected from being known. For someone whose actual identity involves commanding violence and wielding terrifying power, the janitor disguise offers something precious, the chance to be underestimated, to move through the world without the weight of others' fear and calculation. The uniform is freedom through diminishment, safety through assumed powerlessness. When the Grant family mocks the uniform, they're unknowingly mocking the very thing that will destroy them. This irony operates on multiple levels. The surface comedy is obvious. They're insulting someone who could ruin them with a phone call. But the deeper symbolism is about the violence of class hierarchy. They see the uniform and conclude the person wearing it is worthless, beneath them, appropriate target for cruelty. Their worldview is so rigidly structured around visible markers of status that they cannot imagine the janitor might be anything other than what she appears. The uniform reveals their blindness more than it conceals Catherine's identity. The engagement party itself functions as symbolic theater, where performance and truth war for dominance. Engagement parties are fundamentally about promising futures, two people declaring intent to build a life together, two families supposedly merging into one. But this party becomes the stage where every promise proves false. Tony's commitment to Grace is performance-hiding betrayal. The Grant family's welcome is performance-hiding contempt. Catherine's humility is performance-hiding power. And Grace's happiness is real, but built on incomplete information about the sister who made it possible. The party as symbol represents the fragility of social constructions, how quickly the edifice of celebration collapses when subjected to truth. The contrast between Catherine's janitor uniform and the formal wear of the Grant family visualizes the class warfare happening beneath social niceties. Their expensive clothing, jewelry, styled hair, these are weapons in a conflict they don't realize they're losing. Every element of their appearance screams wealth and status and superiority. But clothing is costume, and costume only matters if the audience agrees to the performance. When Catherine reveals her true identity, their expensive garments become emperor's clothes, still objectively valuable, but suddenly meaningless as status markers, because the janitor they mocked commands resources that make their wealth look like pocket change. The drama's use of space carries symbolic weight. The engagement party presumably takes place in the Grant family's territory, their home or a venue they've chosen, decorated according to their aesthetic, filled with their guests. This is their kingdom, and they control access, determine who is honored versus tolerated, set the rules of engagement. Catherine enters this space as supplicant, someone without power or status in this particular hierarchy. But when she reveals herself, the space doesn't change. Physically, same room, same decorations, same people. What changes is the invisible architecture of power. Suddenly, Catherine owns the room, not through legal title, but through the realization that she could purchase the venue, purchase the Grant family's home, purchase their social standing if she desired. Space becomes relative, defined not by walls, but by who has power within them. The recurring motif of vision and blindness structures the drama's symbolic language. The Grant family looks at Catherine and sees a janitor. They have eyes, but they cannot see. Their vision is trained to read surface markers and stop there, to conclude stories based on appearance and never question those conclusions. This is blindness that comes from privilege, from never having to look deeper because surface information has always been sufficient and accurate for people in their position. Meanwhile, Catherine sees everything. She sees their cruelty, sees the fragility of Grace's happiness, sees the betrayal coming before Grace does. Her vision is trained by survival, by years of reading danger in environments where missing signals means death. The drama asks, who is truly blind? The person in the disguise or the people who believe it? Revelation scene itself becomes visual metaphor for power made manifest. However it's staged, whether Catherine makes a phone call that brings military personnel, or someone recognizes her and panic spreads, or she simply states who she is and watches the dominoes fall. The key symbolic element is the transformation without physical change. Catherine doesn't put on a uniform that displays her rank. She doesn't need costume to become the Warlord Queen because she always was the Warlord Queen. The only change is in others' perception, in the Grant family's understanding, reorganizing around information they should have sought but didn't. The revelation is about seeing correctly what was always visible, about the symbolic death of their false narrative and the violent birth of truth. Mirrors, if present in the party venue, would carry obvious but effective symbolism. Characters seeing reflections that reveal truths about themselves. The Grant family looking in mirrors and seeing their cruelty reflected back. Grace, seeing herself and questioning which version is real, the independent woman she believed herself to be or the protected child her sister made possible. Catherine, seeing herself in the janitor uniform and facing the question of which identity is disguise. The humble janitor or the ruthless queen. Mirrors multiply perspective, forcing confrontation with self-image versus actual self. The engagement ring. Tony gave Grace operates as symbol of promises broken. Rings signify commitment, eternity, value. But this ring becomes evidence of fraud when Tony betrays Grace. The circular perfection of the ring contrasts with the fractured reality of the relationship. If Grace removes the ring after betrayal, that action carries weight. She's not just ending an engagement, but rejecting the entire false narrative the ring represented. The ring is beautiful and meaningless, valuable and worthless, simultaneously real and fake, depending on whether you measure monetary worth or symbolic integrity. 20. Food and drink at the engagement party, if shown, symbolize the consumption of illusions. Guests eat and drink and celebrate while standing on ground that's already collapsing beneath them. They just don't know it yet. Catherine might refuse food, unable to participate in celebration that she knows is built on false premises. Or she might eat, performing normalcy while knowing what's coming. Either choice carries meaning. Abstention as silent protest, or participation as the last kindness before she destroys everything. The symbolic language of names carries weight too. Blackwood suggests something dark, strong, enduring, wood that has been burned or aged, that has survived fire or time. Catherine and Grace share this name, share this symbolic strength, even though their experiences of it differ. Grant. As a surname is ironic, they grant nothing except cruelty, give nothing except pain. The name promises generosity but delivers contempt. When the drama contrasts Blackwood and Grant, it's symbolically opposing authentic strength, forged through survival, against false superiority built on inherited advantage. The temporal symbolism of Catherine arriving straight from an undercover mission creates layered meaning. She's literally coming from one role, undercover operative, to another, sister at party, moving between worlds without transition. This absence of buffer space between identities suggests how thin the membrane is between Catherine's different selves, how quickly she moves from contexts of danger to contexts of family. Time becomes compressed, with no space for processing or preparation. The immediacy of her arrival, still in uniform, still mentally in mission mode, shows someone who lives without the luxury of separation between her lives, who carries all her identities simultaneously without rest. What emerges from this symbolic architecture is a visual and conceptual language that operates beneath dialogue, creating meaning through image and juxtaposition and transformation. The drama doesn't just tell us Catherine is powerful despite appearing humble. It shows us through the uniform, through space, through vision, through revelation that transforms perception without changing reality. Symbols become the grammar of power made visible, of truth hidden and then explosively revealed. At its philosophical center, my sister is the Warlord Queen interrogates a question that haunts anyone who has ever protected someone they love. Does true protection require the protected to remain ignorant of what protection costs? Catherine's entire life architecture is built on a resounding yes to this question. She becomes the Warlord Queen, commands special forces, accumulates trillion-dollar resources, and keeps all of it hidden from Grace. The separation is intentional, surgical. Grace gets safety and opportunity. Catherine gets the burden of securing both. This division seems clean until the engagement party forces confrontation with its fundamental instability. Protection built on concealment is protection that collapses the moment truth emerges. The drama explores the ethics of paternalistic love, when one person decides what another needs without consultation or consent. Catherine never asked teenage or adult, Grace, would you prefer I become a warlord to fund your education, or would you prefer we struggle together in poverty but with honesty? She decided unilaterally that Grace deserved a better life and that concealing the cost of that life was part of the gift. This choice is understandable, even beautiful in its sacrifice. But it's also fundamentally disrespectful of Grace's autonomy. Catherine treats Grace as someone to be managed rather than a partner in their shared survival. The love is real, but it's love that denies the beloved full personhood by denying her access to complete truth. Power and its concealment form another thematic pillar. Catherine possesses power that most people can only imagine. Command authority, financial resources, networks of influence. Yet she chooses invisibility, arrives at her sister's celebration in a janitor's uniform, fresh from undercover work. The drama asks, what does it mean to have power and refuse to display it? In a world where power usually demands visibility, where wealth and influence are performed through expensive clothing and dominant social positioning, Catherine's choice to hide represents something radical. She understands that visible power attracts attention, calculation, danger. Invisible power offers freedom. But that freedom comes at the cost of being vulnerable to dismissal and mockery from people who confuse invisibility with powerlessness. The Grant family's cruelty crystallizes a philosophical question about class and human worth. They see Catherine's janitor uniform and conclude she is less valuable as a human being. Their worldview is structured around a hierarchy where service workers occupy a lower ontological status, not just economically disadvantaged, but fundamentally inferior. When Catherine reveals her true position, she doesn't just expose their factual error. She exposes the violence of their entire value system, the way they've constructed human worth around visible markers of status. The drama argues that societies built on such hierarchies are morally bankrupt because they cannot see the humanity in people they've decided are beneath them. Revenge versus justice operates as a central thematic tension. When Tony betrays Grace, Catherine's response is to dismantle the Grant family's social and possibly financial standing. This feels satisfying. They hurt her sister, she hurts them back. But is this justice or revenge? Justice presumably requires proportionality, process, fairness. Catherine offers none of that. She wields her power like a weapon, crushing them because she can. The drama doesn't entirely resolve this tension. It gives viewers the catharsis of watching bullies punished, while simultaneously showing that Catherine's response is fundamentally about retribution, rather than any coherent system of fairness. We're asked to be complicit in enjoying revenge while acknowledging its philosophical problems. The theme of identity and performance runs throughout. Catherine performs the janitor role. Grace performs the happy bride. The Grants perform superiority. Everyone at this engagement party is wearing a mask, playing a part in social theater. But some performances are protective. Catherine hiding to shield Grace, while others are predatory, the Grants performing superiority to justify cruelty. The drama suggests that performance itself isn't the problem. We all perform various selves in different contexts. The problem is when performance becomes weapon, when the gap between public face and private truth is used to harm rather than protect. Sue. Sisterhood, as constructed family, becomes philosophically significant given the Blackwood sisters' abandonment by biological parents. They didn't choose each other in the way friends choose each other. They're sisters by genetic accident. But Catherine chose to stay, chose to protect, chose to build her entire life around Grace's welfare. This transforms genetic accident into deliberate commitment. The drama asks, what makes family real? Is it blood? Or is it the daily choice to show up, protect, sacrifice? Catherine and Grace are sisters biologically, but they're also mother-daughter, protector, protected, adult, child. Their relationship exceeds conventional categories, which makes it both profoundly strong and profoundly complicated. The philosophical tension between strength and vulnerability threads through every scene. Catherine has made herself invulnerable through power accumulation. She commands resources sufficient to destroy enemies, protect allies, insulate herself from most threats. But this invulnerability is also imprisonment. She cannot be weak, cannot ask for help, cannot show the wound underneath the armor because too many people, especially Grace, depend on her strength. The Warlord Queen identity is both achievement and trap. She's powerful and completely alone with that power, unable to share its burden, because sharing would mean revealing and revelation means vulnerability she cannot afford. The drama also interrogates meritocracy and inherited advantage. Catherine built her power from nothing, an abandoned child who had to claw her way to survival and then to dominance. The Grants inherited their position, were born into wealth and status they did nothing to earn. When these two forces collide, the drama is making an argument about which form of power is more legitimate. Catherine's power is earned through suffering and sacrifice. The Grants' power is accident of birth. The narrative clearly sides with Catherine, suggesting that power built from nothing is morally superior to power inherited. but it complicates this by showing that Catherine's earned power makes her ruthless in ways the pampered Grants cannot match. Survival forges different capacities than comfort does. Truth and its consequences form perhaps the deepest philosophical layer. The entire drama is structured around a revelation, Catherine's true identity emerging from beneath the janitor disguise, but revelation is destructive. It destroys the Grant's false superiority, yes, but it also destroys Grace's understanding of her own life, destroys the carefully maintained separation between Catherine's worlds, destroys the possibility of Catherine ever returning to invisibility. Once truth is spoken, it cannot be unspoken. The drama asks whether truth is always worth its cost, whether some illusions serve purposes that justify their maintenance, whether honesty is always the highest value, or if sometimes protection requires concealment. The question of transformation versus revelation is subtle but significant. Does Catherine change when she reveals her identity, or does she simply allow others to see what was always there? The drama suggests the latter. She doesn't become the Warlord Queen in the moment of revelation. She was always the Warlord Queen, even while wearing the janitor uniform. This has implications for how we think about identity. Are we fundamentally one thing that performs different roles? Or are we multiple selves that emerge in different contexts? Catherine seems to be one core self, the protector, who deploys different strategies, janitor disguise, warlord command, to achieve the same goal. Her identity is unified even when her presentation varies. The theme of sacrifice and its recognition, or lack thereof, creates philosophical tension. Catherine has sacrificed enormously for Grace, her own childhood, her safety, possibly her capacity for normal relationships, her ability to be vulnerable. But Grace doesn't know this until the revelation. Can't thank Catherine for sacrifices she doesn't realize were made. This raises the question, does sacrifice without recognition still count as sacrifice, or does it become something else? Perhaps martyrdom or self-imposed suffering? Catherine never asked for gratitude, deliberately concealed her actions to avoid Grace feeling indebted. But the absence of recognition means she carries the weight alone, without even the relief of acknowledgement. The drama also engages with questions of feminine power in masculine spaces. The title Warlord Queen marks Catherine's position in traditionally male-dominated spheres, military command, violence management, strategic warfare. She's not just powerful, she's powerful in ways that society codes as masculine. Yet she wields this power in service of a traditionally feminine role-protecting family, especially protecting a younger female relative. Catherine doesn't reject femininity or embrace masculinity. She integrates both, taking whatever tools serve her protective purpose regardless of gender coding. This makes her threatening to patriarchal structures that depend on keeping power gendered and women excluded from violence. The philosophical question of proportionate response haunts the drama's climax. When the Grants mock Catherine, that's cruel, but relatively small. Scale harm, social humiliation, emotional pain, but no lasting damage. When Tony betrays Grace, that's worse, but still interpersonal betrayal, the kind of heartbreak that happens in relationships. Catherine's response, potentially destroying their social standing, ruining their finances, leveraging military and governmental power against individuals, is vastly disproportionate to the initial harm. The drama wants us to enjoy this disproportion, to celebrate Catherine crushing them like insects, but it also quietly asks whether someone with her level of power, using it against relatively powerless individuals. Yes, the Grants are wealthy, but they're not warlord. Queen powerful is justice or abuse. What emerges thematically is a portrait of protection as both noble and destructive, of power as liberation and prison, of truth as necessary and devastating. The drama refuses easy answers to its central questions. It shows Catherine's sacrifices as beautiful and shows them as damaging to her psyche. It presents her revenge as satisfying and as morally questionable. It celebrates her power and mourns what that power costs to build. The philosophical richness comes from this refusal to simplify, from holding contradictions in tension rather than resolving them into easy moral clarity. My Sister is the Warlord Queen is engineered for visceral satisfaction, built on emotional mechanics that guarantee viewer investment even before quality of execution is assessed. The fundamental architecture is wish fulfillment, watching someone powerful pretend to be powerless, absorb humiliation, and then reveal the truth to devastating effect. This structure is ancient, appearing in fairy tales and myths across cultures. It works because it taps into universal experiences of being underestimated, dismissed, or mocked, and offers the fantasy of perfect vindication. The drama doesn't hide this manipulation. It leans into it, trusts that viewers want this specific emotional journey, and delivers it with calculated precision. The opening creates investment through two simultaneous mechanisms. First, establishing Catherine's genuine love for Grace through her choice to come directly from undercover work still in Janitor's uniform. We see someone prioritizing her sister's celebration over her own presentation, which codes as selfless love. Viewers bond with characters who demonstrate care for others, especially family. Second, showing the Grant family's cruelty establishes clear antagonists. Within minutes, the drama has created someone to root for, Catherine, and people to root against, the Grants. This binary emotional structure is simple but effective. We know who deserves our empathy and who deserves punishment before any complex characterization occurs. The extended humiliation sequence is perhaps the drama's riskiest emotional gambit. We watch Catherine absorb insult after insult, mockery after mockery, while knowing she could stop it instantly by revealing her identity. This creates a specific emotional state in viewers, frustrated anticipation. We want her to reveal herself. We're angry on her behalf. The longer the humiliation continues, the more pressure builds. This is emotional manipulation through delayed gratification. The drama withholds what we want, revelation and vindication, to make it more satisfying when it finally arrives. But there's a threshold. Make viewers wait too long, and frustration turns to anger at the drama itself, at Catherine for enduring unnecessarily. The timing of how long to extend humiliation before revelation is where craft separates successful execution from failure. Samantha Jers's performance as Catherine carries significant emotional weight in making the manipulation effective. If she plays Catherine as secretly smug, knowing her vindication is coming, the emotional architecture collapses. We need to see genuine hurt, genuine cost to the humiliation for the vindication to feel earned. But if she plays pure victimization with no hint of inner strength, Catherine becomes pathetic rather than admirable. The performance must balance vulnerability and restraint. We see her wounded by the mockery, but choosing not to respond, absorbing blows through conscious decision rather than inability to defend herself. This makes her both sympathetic and impressive, someone hurt but not broken. The Betrayal of Grace by Tony functions as emotional escalation. Catherine's humiliation was cruel, but she was enduring it for Grace's sake, which gave it purpose and made it bearable. But when Tony betrays Grace, suddenly the sacrifice was meaningless. Grace isn't protected. Catherine's endurance purchased nothing. This narrative beat transforms Catherine's emotional state from strategic patience to protective fury. For viewers, it provides moral justification for what comes next. If Catherine revealed her identity just to stop her own humiliation, it might feel petty or vain, but revealing herself to protect Grace and punish those who hurt her feels righteous. The drama is carefully calibrating our emotional permission structure, giving us reasons to enjoy Catherine's revenge without guilt. The revelation scene is pure emotional catharsis, the moment the entire drama has been building toward. However it's staged, phone call bringing military personnel, recognition spreading through the crowd, Catherine simply stating her identity. The key emotional beat is watching the Grants realize their mistake, their faces as understanding dawns, their panic as power dynamics invert, their attempts to apologize or explain now that they understand who they've insulted. This is humiliation, returning to sender, and the drama invites viewers to enjoy it without reservation. We've earned this satisfaction by suffering through Catherine's humiliation. The payoff is watching the bullies experience terror. But the drama's emotional manipulation is more sophisticated than simple revenge fantasy. It also weaves in genuine pathos through the Catherine-Grace relationship. When Grace sees who her sister really is, not the humble sibling she thought, but a warlord queen who built an empire to protect her, the emotional beat is complex. There's gratitude, yes, but also potential betrayal. You lied to me about who you are, and fear you're capable of violence. I never imagined, and inadequacy. I can never protect you the way you've protected me. The drama introduces emotional complication into what could have been pure triumph. suggesting that Revelation solves some problems while creating others. Poe! The pacing of emotional beats follows a calculated rhythm. Early sequences are slower, allowing time to establish relationships and build investment in Catherine and Grace. The mockery scenes feel extended, almost uncomfortable in their duration, building pressure. Then the betrayal and revelation compress time, happening in rapid succession so viewers don't have space to question or resist. They're carried along by narrative momentum. The ending, depending on version, may slow again, allowing emotional processing of what just occurred. This acceleration and deceleration creates emotional rhythm that prevents monotony while maintaining engagement. Music, if the production uses it effectively, would function as emotional underlining, telling viewers how to feel about what they're seeing. During humiliation scenes, music might be minimal or discordant, creating discomfort. During revelation, music might swell triumphantly, signaling permission to feel satisfied. This is manipulation in the most literal sense, using sound to bypass conscious analysis and trigger emotional response. Effective drama doesn't apologize for this manipulation. It uses it strategically to ensure viewers experience the intended emotional journey regardless of their individual resistance. The drama also deploys the emotional mechanism of social justice satisfaction. The grants represent a recognizable real-world phenomenon. Wealthy people who treat service workers as subhuman, who believe their money makes them superior. Viewers watching likely have experienced or witnessed this behavior, carry anger about class inequality, and how wealth enables cruelty without consequence. Catherine's revenge isn't just personal, it's symbolic. She's punishing a class of people who usually face no repercussions for their contempt. The emotional satisfaction is about watching systemic power dynamics correct in a way they rarely do in reality. It's wish fulfillment that engages with class anger, channeling legitimate social frustration into narrative catharsis. We expect Catherine to be weak based on her appearance and treatment. The contrast between expectation and reality creates cognitive pleasure. Our brains enjoy having patterns disrupted in ways that resolve into new patterns. The surprise of the janitor is actually incredibly powerful, triggers satisfaction similar to solving a puzzle. We were given misleading information, figured out, or were told the truth, and now experience the pleasure of pieces falling into place. The drama is structured as a mystery, where the audience is let in on the secret before the characters are, creating dramatic irony that makes us feel clever and informed. Emotional manipulation also operates through identification. Most viewers aren't warlord queens commanding trillion-dollar resources, but most viewers have felt underestimated, dismissed because of appearance or class or some other visible marker. Catherine becomes a vessel for our own experiences of invisibility and desire for vindication. When she reveals her power, it's not just her vindication, it's ours by proxy. The drama offers emotional satisfaction we can't get in real life. We're revealing our true power. Either isn't dramatic because we're not actually secretly powerful or doesn't produce the satisfying humiliation of those who underestimated us. Fiction provides the emotional experience reality denies. The drama likely also employs body language and microexpressions to create emotional texture. Catherine standing straight despite mockery shows dignity. Her jaw tightening shows restraint. Small signs of emotion breaking through her controlled exterior make her feel human rather than robotic. The grant's casual cruelty-dismissive gestures, rolled eyes, smirking, creates visceral anger because these are behaviors we recognize from real experiences of being dismissed. When those same people show fear after revelation, their body language shifting from dominant to submissive, it triggers satisfaction in our primate brains that respond to status displays. The emotional architecture ultimately depends on delivering expected satisfaction while adding enough complication to feel substantial rather than empty. Pure revenge. Fantasy without emotional cost or complexity is junk food satisfying in a moment, but leaving no lasting impression. My Sister is the Warlord Queen, adds layers through the sisterly relationship, through questions about protection and truth, through showing Catherine's vulnerability beneath her power. These layers don't negate the wish fulfillment. They make it richer, give it weight, transform simple satisfaction into something that resonates beyond the immediate viewing experience. The structural logic of My Sister is the Warlord Queen is deceptively simple. Hidden identity revealed, power unveiled, enemies punished. This three-act structure compressed into a short drama format demands economy of storytelling. Every scene must serve multiple functions simultaneously: character establishment, relationship building, tension creation, thematic development. There's no room for tangential exploration or atmospheric wandering. The narrative moves with purpose toward the inevitable revelation, which creates both strength, propulsive momentum, and limitation, potential predictability. Buck. The decision to begin in medias res. Catherine, arriving at the engagement party already in her janitor disguise, fresh from undercover work, is structurally efficient. We don't waste time on her receiving the invitation, deciding to attend, or traveling to the venue. We enter at the threshold moment when she crosses from her world into Grace's celebration. This compression eliminates exposition in favor of immediate dramatic tension. The backstory of their childhood abandonment and Catherine's rise to power can be delivered through dialogue and flashback as needed, but the narrative presence starts at the point of maximum dramatic potential, the collision of Catherine's two worlds. The audience learns Catherine's true identity early, either through opening text, character dialogue, or contextual clues. We watch the engagement party knowing what the Grant family doesn't, that the janitor they're mocking commands power beyond their comprehension. This creates a specific narrative tension. We're not wondering who is Catherine really. We're wondering when will they find out and what will happen. The drama isn't about discovery for the audience, it's about anticipating the moment of discovery for the characters and the consequences that will follow. This ironic structure allows the drama to be about the revelation rather than building toward it as surprise. The pleasure comes from superior knowledge, from watching people make catastrophic mistakes we can see coming. Every insult the Grants deliver, every dismissive gesture, every moment of cruelty becomes evidence that will condemn them once truth emerges. The narrative is constructing a case for their punishment that we witness being built in real time, creating investment in seeing that case prosecuted. The pacing accelerates through the engagement party sequence. Early scenes can afford slightly more breathing room, establishing the setting, introducing characters, showing the initial dynamic between Catherine and the Grants. But as mockery accumulates and Tony's betrayal approaches, scenes compress, dialogue sharpens, tension escalates. The structure mimics a tightening noose, space constricting until explosion becomes inevitable. This acceleration is crucial for maintaining engagement in a short format where viewers can't be asked to wait long for payoff. The betrayal of Grace by Tony functions as the structural trigger that changes Catherine from passive to active. Prior to this moment, Catherine is absorbing, enduring, strategically choosing inaction. The betrayal is the plot point that shifts her mode from defensive to offensive. Structurally, this gives the narrative a clear before and after pivot. Before betrayal, Catherine suffers for Grace's sake. After betrayal, Catherine acts for Grace's sake. The same motivation, protecting her sister, but inverse strategy. This pivot prevents the narrative from being static. We're not just watching humiliation for its own sake, we're watching pressure build toward release. The revelation itself must be staged for maximum impact. However the drama chooses to do it, Catherine making a phone call that summons military personnel, someone recognizing her and panic spreading, her simply stating her identity and listing her resources. The structural requirement is clear: complete inversion of power dynamics in a compressed time frame. We need to watch the Grants' reality reorganize, see their confidence collapse into terror, witness them attempt to recalibrate their behavior now that they understand who they've been tormenting. The revelation isn't a single beat, but a sequence where each character processes the information and we watch their individual responses. The narrative faces a structural challenge, common to revenge fantasies. What happens after vindication? Once Catherine reveals herself and the Grants are humiliated, punished, the dramatic engine that powered the story has fired. The narrative must either end quickly or find new dramatic territory to explore. Many short dramas in this format choose swift conclusion, villain punished, protagonist triumphant, credits roll. But more ambitious versions might explore the aftermath, how Grace processes this information about her sister, whether Catherine's revelation protects Grace or endangers her, what cost Catherine pays for dropping her disguise. This is where structure separates simple from complex storytelling. The nested conflict structure adds depth if executed well. The surface conflict is Catherine versus the Grant family. She's insulted, she reveals power. She wins. But underneath runs the conflict between protection and truth in Catherine's relationship with Grace. And deeper still is Catherine's internal conflict about identity. Who is she really, the humble sister or the ruthless warlord queen? If the narrative only resolves the surface conflict, it feels thin. If it addresses multiple layers, showing how the Grant family's defeat affects the Catherine-Grace relationship and Catherine's self-understanding, the structure achieves resonance beyond simple revenge. The temporal compression of the short drama format forces narrative efficiency but risks superficiality. There isn't time to show Catherine's rise to power in detail, to explore years of relationship between the sisters, to develop the Grant family as complex characters rather than flat antagonists. The structure must make choices about what to show versus imply, what to dramatize versus reference. Strong execution uses visual shorthand and dialogue economy to suggest depth without spending narrative time proving it. Weak execution either over-explains, stopping momentum for exposition, or develops leaving characters as thin types rather than dimensional people. The parallel structure between Catherine's humiliation and Grace's betrayal is narratively elegant if intentionally crafted. Both sisters are hurt by the same family. Both experience public degradation at what should be a celebration. This parallelism creates structural symmetry while also showing why Catherine's tolerance breaks at this specific moment. She could endure pain to herself, but watching Grace suffer crosses a threshold. The structure is saying, pain to the protector is absorbable. Pain to the protected is unforgivable. The choice of where to end the narrative reveals its priorities. Ending immediately after revelation and Grant family humiliation makes it purely a revenge. Fantasy, bad people punished, good person triumphant, satisfaction delivered. Ending with the scene between Catherine and Grace afterward makes it a relationship drama that used revenge as catalyst to explore sisterly bonds. Ending with Catherine alone, processing what she revealed and lost by revealing it, makes it a character study about the costs of power and truth. Each ending serves the same beginning differently, transforms the same story into different genres. The narrative logic also depends on maintaining internal consistency about power and its limits. Catherine commands vast resources, special forces, trillion-dollar war chests, but she can't prevent Tony from betraying Grace, can't stop her sister's heartbreak. Power in the external world doesn't grant power over emotions and relationships. This limitation is crucial for keeping Catherine human rather than godlike. If she's truly omnipotent, there's no tension. But if her power has boundaries, she can destroy enemies but can't guarantee her sister's happiness. Then conflict remains possible even after revelation. My sister is the warlord queen emerges from and speaks to a specific cultural moment characterized by heightened class consciousness and hunger for stories where the powerful face consequences. The 2025 release positions it within a landscape where wealth inequality has reached historical extremes, where the visible gap between service workers and wealthy elites generates constant social tension, where audiences increasingly demand narratives that address rather than ignore economic injustice. This drama, however compressed and melodramatic its format, is processing real cultural anxiety about power, class, and visibility. The short drama format itself, often distributed through mobile platforms like ReelShort, designed for vertical viewing, episodic but bingeable, represents a democratization of content consumption. These aren't prestige productions requiring theatrical distribution or premium cable subscriptions. They're accessible, immediate, designed for audiences who consume media on phones during commutes or breaks. The format itself makes a statement about who gets to access entertainment and what kinds of stories reach people outside traditional gatekeeping structures. Catherine's story being told in this format, rather than as a Hollywood film or network series, is culturally significant. It's a power fantasy for the masses delivered through mass-accessible technology. The drama engages directly with service worker invisibility, a phenomenon that became hyper-visible during the COVID-19 pandemic, when essential workers, often the lowest paid, least respected positions, were suddenly recognized as critical infrastructure. Catherine, disguised as a janitor, isn't just generic disguise. It's specifically choosing the identity of someone society trains itself not to see. Janitors, cleaners, service workers exist in a state of mandated invisibility. They're supposed to do their work without being noticed, to serve without being acknowledged. The drama weaponizes this invisibility, showing how someone truly powerful could move through elite spaces completely undetected by wearing the uniform of someone elites are trained to ignore. This has particular resonance in contemporary culture, where conversations about essential workers, living wages, and the dignity of service work have intensified. Catherine's janitor disguise and the Grant family's contemptuous response to it aren't just plot mechanics. They're commentary on how class hierarchy functions through visibility and invisibility. The wealthy can't imagine that the janitor might be more powerful than them, because their entire worldview depends on service workers being actually inferior, not just economically disadvantaged, but ontologically lesser. The drama exposes this belief system as both morally bankrupt and practically dangerous. The gender dimension of Catherine's power adds another layer of cultural commentary. She's not just powerful, she's a warlord queen, female authority in male-dominated spaces of military command and violent conflict. The 2020s have seen increased cultural conversation about women in positions of power, particularly in fields traditionally coded masculine. But there's also backlash against powerful women, attempts to delegitimize or diminish their authority. Catherine's character represents a fantasy of unassailable female power, not power granted by men who could revoke it, but power seized and maintained through competence and force. She doesn't ask permission. She doesn't justify herself. She simply is powerful, and those who underestimated her based on gender alongside class pay for that mistake. The drama also speaks to contemporary discourse around authenticity and performance. In an era of social media where everyone curates multiple versions of themselves for different audiences, Catherine's double identity resonates. She performs humility while being secretly powerful. She wears different masks for different contexts. This isn't presented as deception so much as necessary navigation of a hostile world. You hide your true self to protect it from those who would use that knowledge against you. There's cultural recognition here of how marginalized people code switch, hide aspects of identity, perform versions of self that dominant groups find acceptable, while maintaining authentic selves in safer spaces. The engagement party setting taps into cultural anxiety about weddings and marriage as sites of class performance. Weddings have become increasingly expensive, elaborate productions where families demonstrate status through venue selection, guest lists, decorations, entertainment. The engagement party is a microcosm of this performative excess, an event designed to display the Grant family's wealth and status, to mark Grace's transition from lower-class origins to upper-class belonging through marriage. Catherine's presence as the poorly dressed sister threatens this performance, introduces visual evidence that Grace comes from different circumstances. The Grant's cruelty toward Catherine is about protecting the performance, eliminating the detail that doesn't fit the narrative they're constructing. The drama's treatment of betrayal in romantic relationships also carries cultural weight. Tony's betrayal of Grace at their own engagement party represents a particular contemporary fear, that the person you've chosen to build life with is performing love while planning harm. In an era of high-profile public betrayals, where private cruelty in relationships gets exposed through social media and public revelations, the fear of being humiliated by a partner who was never what they seemed resonates. The engagement party setting makes it worse. Betrayal not in private, but in front of community. Humiliation as public spectacle. The revenge fantasy element speaks to cultural frustration with the absence of accountability for wealthy people who behave cruelly. In reality, the Grant family types usually face no consequences for their contempt towards service workers or lower-class individuals. Social hierarchies protect them. Economic power insulates them. Legal systems favor them. Catherine's ability to punish them fulfills a desire for justice that reality rarely provides. This is wish fulfillment that addresses real grievance. Audiences want to see wealthy bullies face repercussions, because they so rarely do outside fiction. No! The drama's compressed format and mobile distribution also reflect changing attention economies and content consumption patterns. Audiences increasingly favor shorter, more intense narrative experiences over extended development. The short drama format delivers emotional satisfaction in minutes rather than hours, provides catharsis without requiring sustained attention investment. This isn't necessarily degradation of audience capacity, it's adaptation to media landscape where competing stimuli are constant and attention is fragmented. My Sister is the Warlord Queen succeeds by being efficient, delivering maximum emotional impact per minute of runtime. The cultural moment of 2025 also includes heightened awareness of military power and surveillance capabilities. Catherine's command of special forces and vast intelligence networks speaks to contemporary understanding that power increasingly functions through information and the capacity for violence, rather than traditional wealth alone. She's not just rich, she commands state-level capabilities, can deploy military resources for personal purposes. This reflects cultural anxiety about the merger of private wealth and state power, about how concentrated resources enable individuals to operate with nation-state capabilities. No, the drama's treatment of family and chosen obligation also resonates culturally. In an era where traditional family structures have diversified and many people construct family from choice rather than genetics, Catherine's total devotion to Grace despite their parents' abandonment represents an ideal of chosen commitment. Their bond isn't automatic or easy. Catherine had to choose to stay, to sacrifice, to build her life around protecting someone else. This speaks to contemporary values that emphasize chosen family, intentional relationships maintained through active care rather than passive expectation. The visual contrast between Catherine in Janitor's uniform and the Grant family in expensive formal wear isn't just character distinction. It's commentary on how capitalism uses consumption and display to create and maintain class boundaries. The Grants' clothing is their armor, their way of signaling membership in a class that's protected from people like the person they think Catherine is. The uniform is supposed to mark Catherine as lower class, someone who serves rather than commands. The revelation that these visual markers are lies exposes how much class hierarchy depends on performance and shared agreement to read those performances correctly. The drama's international accessibility through platforms like ReelShort and YouTube also means it participates in global conversations about class, power, and gender rather than being contained within one national context. The themes of service worker invisibility, wealthy cruelty, female power, and family loyalty translate across cultural boundaries even as specific details might need adjustment. This creates a form of cultural storytelling that operates beyond traditional national cinema frameworks, reaching audiences directly through digital distribution. What makes the cultural commentary effective, despite the melodramatic format, is that it's embedded in emotional storytelling rather than delivered as lecture. Audiences aren't watching an essay on class inequality. They're watching a sister protect another sister, watching bullies get punished, watching hidden power revealed. But embedded in that emotional narrative are arguments about social hierarchy, gender and power, the dignity of work, and the violence of contempt. The drama does cultural work while providing entertainment, processes social anxiety while delivering wish fulfillment. My sister is the Warlord Queen exists within a rich tradition of hidden identity narratives that stretches back through cinema history and deeper into folklore and fairy tale. The structural DNA of powerful figure disguised as powerless person appears in stories from Cinderella to Superman. From The Prince and the Pauper to Coming to America. What distinguishes contemporary iterations like this drama is the specific cultural inflection. The disguise isn't magical transformation or royal incognito, but rather the invisibility of class hierarchy, and the power revealed isn't benign privilege but capacity for violence and dominance. The short drama format positions this story within a specific emerging genre mobile-first narrative content designed for vertical viewing and episodic consumption. This format shares DNA with soap operas and telenovelas, compressed emotion, heightened stakes, clear moral binaries, but adapted for contemporary distribution platforms and attention patterns. The format enables certain storytelling choices while constraining others. There's no room for ambiguity or slow burn development. Characters must be immediately readable. Emotional beats must land quickly. Resolution must come swiftly. These constraints shape the narrative into something that maximizes intensity per minute of runtime. The revenge fantasy subgenre provides crucial context. Films like Old Boy, Kill Bill, John Wick, and The Count of Monte Cristo establish templates for narratives where humiliation or harm triggers transformation into vengeance engine. But My Sister is the Warlord Queen introduces a gendered variation. The protagonist isn't seeking revenge for direct harm to herself, but for harm to someone she protects. Catherine's revenge is maternal sisterly, rather than personal in the narrowest sense, which shifts the emotional register from simple retribution to protective justice. D. The drama also participates in the return of the king. Narrative archetype. The rightful power returning from exile or disguise to reclaim their position, but it inverts the restoration element. Catherine isn't reclaiming visible authority she lost. She's revealing authority she always had but kept hidden. The drama asks, what if the king never left, just wore different clothing? This variation creates a different emotional dynamic than traditional return narratives. There's no journey of redemption or proving oneself worthy. Catherine was always worthy, always powerful. Only others' perception changes. The sister relationship positions this drama in conversation with stories of protective siblings. Frozen, A Quiet Place, The Hunger Games, where one sibling's central motivation is protecting another. But where those narratives often involve mutual protection or the younger sibling growing into agency, Catherine's protection of Grace is fundamentally asymmetric. Grace doesn't protect Catherine in return. Grace doesn't even know she needs protection until the revelation. This creates a different power dynamic than reciprocal sibling protection narratives, closer to parent-child relationships than equal partnerships. The drama's class warfare element connects it to films like Parasite, Knives Out, The Menu, and Triangle of Sadness, contemporary works that explicitly engage with wealth inequality and the psychological violence of class hierarchy. But while those films tend towards satire or slow-burn revelation, My Sister, Is the Warlord Queen operates as direct fantasy. It doesn't complicate class dynamics or find humanity in wealthy characters. It presents them as villains to be defeated, offering the satisfaction of watching class hierarchy inverted through force, rather than the uncomfortable complexity of class as systemic, rather than individual moral failing. The Warlord Queen archetype itself draws from both historical figures, women who commanded military power, like Boudica, Zenobia, or Wu Zetian, and fictional representations like Daenerys Targaryen, Cersei Lannister, or Furiosa. These are women who wield power typically reserved for men, who command violence directly, rather than through male proxies. Catherine fits this tradition, but with a contemporary twist. Her power isn't medieval or fantasy, but bureaucratic and financial, expressed through modern systems of military command and economic leverage. She's a warlord queen in business suits and janitor's uniforms rather than armor. Sequae. The drama's treatment of disguise and revelation also connects to superhero narratives, where secret identities function as protection mechanism. Clark Kent is Superman's disguise, allowing him to move through normal life without the burden of being constantly recognized as powerful. Catherine's janitor uniform functions similarly. It's protective camouflage that lets her exist in normal human spaces without the complications her true identity would bring. The revelation scene shares DNA with moments when superheroes reveal themselves, when the mask comes off and the world must reorganize around new information. But the drama diverges from traditional superhero narratives in crucial ways. Superhero secret identities typically protect the hero's loved ones from enemies who might target them. Catherine's disguise protects Grace from knowledge rather than physical danger. The threat isn't external enemies attacking Grace to get at Catherine. It's Catherine's truth itself being the disruptive force. This makes the power dynamics more psychologically complex than typical superhero secret identity scenarios. The short format and mobile distribution position this drama within emerging content ecosystems that challenge traditional cinema and television structures. Platforms like ReelShort, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts are creating new narrative languages optimized for mobile viewing, where each minute must justify itself through immediate engagement. Traditional film pacing, slow, establishing shots, extended character development, atmospheric build, doesn't translate. My Sister, Is the Warlord Queen represents adaptation to these constraints, finding ways to deliver emotional satisfaction and narrative complexity within severe time limitations. The drama also participates in the girl boss narrative trend of the 2010s and 2020s, though with complications. Catherine is supremely competent, commands vast resources, dominates every space she enters once revealed. This fits the powerful woman succeeding in male-dominated sphere template. But the drama undercuts simplistic girl boss celebration by showing the cost. Catherine had to sacrifice childhood, normalcy, vulnerability, authentic relationships. Her power isn't empowering liberation, but survival strategy. that became identity prison. This adds depth to what could otherwise be flat fantasy of female power without consequences. Comparing My Sister is the Warlord Queen to other recent short drama productions reveals evolving genre conventions. Many Chinese and Korean short dramas follow similar templates. Hidden identity revealed, class boundaries crossed, powerful figures disguised among ordinary people. The format is developing its own grammar, recognizable beats and structures that audiences have learned to anticipate and enjoy. Catherine's story is both typical of this emerging genre and a specific variation that emphasizes sisterly protection over romantic relationships that dominate many similar narratives. The drama's relationship to melodrama as cinematic mode is also significant. Melodrama emphasizes emotion over realism, uses heightened situations to explore moral and psychological extremes. My Sister is the Warlord Queen is unabashedly melodramatic. The situations are extreme, the emotions are large, the moral universe is clear. But melodrama isn't primitive or unsophisticated. It's a mode that prioritizes different values than naturalism. In melodrama, external events represent internal states. Plot becomes vehicle for emotional and moral exploration. Judging this drama by standards of naturalism misses that it's operating in a different mode with different goals. The genre positioning also involves considering what this drama isn't trying to be. It's not attempting documentary realism about how military power actually works or how warlords operate in contemporary geopolitics. It's not interested in the complex ethics of wielding violence. It's not building toward ambiguous resolution where all characters have valid perspectives. Understanding genre means recognizing these absences as intentional choices rather than failures. The drama knows what it is. Compressed wish fulfillment about power revealed and bullies punished, and executes that genre effectively, rather than attempting more complex narratives. Its format can't sustain. What emerges from this genre analysis is appreciation for how My Sister is the Warlord Queen works within and against tradition simultaneously. It uses familiar story structures, hidden identity, protective sibling, class conflict, but inflects them with contemporary concerns about gender, power, visibility, and justice. It participates in emerging short drama conventions, while bringing specific variation through its emphasis on sisterly bonds over romance. It's melodrama that understands melodrama's possibilities, rather than apologizing for not being naturalism. The drama succeeds by knowing its genre lineage and choosing which elements to honor, which to subvert, and which to ignore entirely. The lasting impression of My Sister is the Warlord Queen isn't the specifics of plot or the sophistication of production. It's the emotional catharsis of watching someone finally stop hiding. In a world where most people negotiate daily between authentic selves and performed selves, where code switching and masking are survival strategies, watching Catherine discard the janitor uniform and reveal her true power touches something fundamental. The fantasy isn't really about commanding special forces or having trillion-dollar resources. The fantasy is about being so secure in your power that you can finally stop pretending, stop protecting others from who you are, stop making yourself smaller to fit spaces that were never built for you. For viewers who have worked service industry jobs, who have experienced the specific invisibility of being someone wealthy people don't bother to see, Catherine's story offers vindication by proxy. The drama says, maybe you're not secretly a warlord queen, but the people who dismiss you based on your uniform or your position are making the same mistake the Grants made. They're confusing current circumstances with permanent identity, assuming visibility equals totality. The emotional gift the drama offers these viewers is validation. Your invisibility to them doesn't mean you're actually less valuable, less intelligent, less worthy. It means they're too limited to see accurately. The sister relationship at the drama's core provides its emotional anchor beyond the revenge fantasy. Catherine and Grace's bond, complicated, asymmetric, built on both profound love and profound secrets, represents something more universal than the specific plot. It's about what we sacrifice for people we love, about whether protection requires concealment, about the moment when the protected discovers they were protected and must reckon with that knowledge. Anyone who has been the strong sibling, the caretaker, the one who absorbed pain to shield others from it, sees themselves in Catherine. Anyone who has been the protected one, The younger sibling, who didn't understand the cost of their safety until later, sees themselves in grace. The drama's treatment of power, having it, hiding it, revealing it. Revealing it also resonates beyond its specific narrative. Many people move through the world holding some form of power or skill or knowledge that others around them don't recognize. The power might not be commanding armies. It might be intellectual capacity in a space that assumes you're stupid, technical expertise in a room that doesn't see you, emotional intelligence in a context that values only aggression. Catherine's story validates the experience of having hidden depths that others consistently miss. The moment of revelation, when she stops hiding, offers the fantasy of finally being seen correctly, of others recognizing what was always there, but they were too blind to perceive. The drama's commercial success and viral spread across platforms like YouTube, Dailymotion, and ReelShort suggests it's touching something collectively resonant. In the fragmented media landscape of the mid-2020s, content succeeds by offering something audiences actively want to replay and share. My Sister is the Warlord Queen clearly provides that. The satisfaction is potent enough that viewers return to it, recommend it, seek out similar content. This indicates the revenge against class contempt narrative is meeting a widespread hunger for stories where social hierarchies face disruption and wealthy bullies face consequences. The rewatch value comes from knowing what the Grant family doesn't know. Once you've seen Catherine's revelation, watching the early mockery scenes becomes different. You're no longer frustrated by her restraint, but impressed by it, no longer anxious about when she'll act, but appreciating the control it takes not to act immediately. The knowledge transforms the viewing experience from suspenseful to ironic, from what will happen to watch these fools condemn themselves. This shift in perspective provides reason to engage with the material multiple times, each viewing offering different pleasures. The drama's weaknesses are also worth acknowledging honestly. The Grant family are one-dimensional villains without complexity or humanity. They exist purely to be despised and punished. This serves the revenge fantasy but limits emotional sophistication. Real humans, even cruel ones, have dimensions and motivations beyond sadism. The drama's choice to flatten them into pure antagonists makes the narrative clean but simplistic. Similarly, the resolution likely comes too easily. Catherine's power solves everything. No messy consequences, no permanent costs beyond whatever emotional processing happens between the sisters. Real life rarely offers such complete vindication, which is why we need fiction to provide it. But it also means the drama doesn't grapple with complexity that more ambitious narratives would engage. The performance by Samantha Drews, as Catherine carries significant weight in determining the drama's effectiveness. A weaker actor playing Catherine as purely tough or purely victimized would collapse the character into caricature. The role requires showing vulnerability without weakness, power without arrogance, love without sentimentality. If Drews manages this balance, and her casting in the lead suggests producers believe she can, the drama transcends its limited format to deliver genuine emotional impact. If the performance falls flat, the entire structure collapses because Catherine must be compelling enough to justify the elaborate narrative machinery built around her revelation. For audiences seeking pure escapist satisfaction, My Sister is the Warlord Queen delivers efficiently and effectively. It knows what it is, commits fully to that identity, and doesn't waste time on elements that don't serve its core purpose. The 18,000-word analysis contained in this script may seem excessive for a short drama, but that's precisely the point. Even compressed, populist narratives contain layers worth examining. They process cultural anxieties, fulfill emotional needs, and participate in genre traditions, whether consciously or not. Taking them seriously as cultural objects reveals how storytelling operates across quality spectrums and format variations. The drama's ultimate assessment depends on what you value. If you prioritize narrative complexity, moral ambiguity, and character depth, My Sister is the Warlord Queen will feel thin despite its satisfying premise. If you value emotional efficiency, genre clarity, and cathartic satisfaction, it succeeds admirably at its goals. The drama doesn't pretend to be more than it is, a compressed revenge, fantasy about hidden power revealed and cruelty punished. Within those parameters, it executes effectively, providing audiences exactly what the premise promises, the pleasure of watching someone powerful stop hiding and watching those who underestimated her face the consequences of their blindness. What lingers after watching isn't the specifics of Catherine's resources or the details of the Grant family's humiliation. What lingers is the emotional truth underneath the melodrama, that being invisible is both protection and prison, that protecting someone you love can mean they never fully know you, that revelation is simultaneously liberation and loss. Catherine gains vindication, but loses the safety of her disguise. Grace gains truth, but loses her innocent understanding of who her sister is. The engagement party that was supposed to celebrate a beginning becomes an ending instead. The end of Catherine's anonymity, the end of Grace's ignorance, the end of the Grant family's comfortable cruelty. For viewers navigating their own complicated relationships with power, visibility, and protection, My Sister is the Warlord Queen offers a space to process those tensions through melodramatic displacement. We watch Catherine make choices, to hide, to endure, to reveal, to punish, and we consider what we might do in her position, what we have done in our own versions of similar situations. The drama becomes mirror and window simultaneously. We see ourselves reflected in the characters' dilemmas while looking through the narrative into possibilities our own lives may never offer. The cultural legacy of My Sister is the Warlord Queen will likely be modest. It's one of many short dramas competing for attention in an oversaturated content landscape. It won't revolutionize cinema or redefine genre, but within its niche, it represents competent execution of a formula that continues to resonate. The hidden identity narrative endures across centuries because it speaks to fundamental human experiences, the gap between how we're perceived and who we actually are, the desire for recognition, the fantasy of being seen correctly, and having that recognition matter. The drama succeeds because it understands that audiences don't come to this genre for realism or complexity. They come for emotional experience, the vicarious thrill of power hidden and revealed, the satisfaction of bullies punished, the validation of service workers having secret depths, the wish fulfillment of protection that works. My Sister is the Warlord Queen delivers these experiences efficiently, wrapping them in just enough character relationship and emotional texture to feel substantial rather than empty. It's comfort food, not haute cuisine, and there's value in stories that feed emotional hunger without demanding excessive processing work from viewers who may be exhausted from processing their actual lives. In the end, this is a story about a woman who built herself into a weapon to protect someone she loves, who learned to hide that weapon to preserve normalcy, and who finally stopped hiding when hiding failed to prevent harm. That core narrative, sacrifice, concealment, revelation, vindication, will resonate as long as people experience the tension between their hidden selves and visible selves, between protection and truth, between power and love. My Sister is the Warlord Queen, maybe a brief, melodramatic short drama, but it's processing questions that are neither brief nor melodramatic. What do we owe the people we love? When does protection become control? What does it cost to be powerful and invisible simultaneously? And what happens when we finally stop hiding and demand to be seen? Samantha Drews faces a formidable acting challenge in My Sister is the Warlord Queen. She must convince audiences that the same person can be both the janitor absorbing humiliation and the Warlord Queen commanding trillion-dollar resources. This isn't simply playing two different characters. It's playing one character performing two identities while maintaining psychological continuity between them. The failure point is obvious. If Catherine as janitor seems weak rather than restrained, or Catherine as queen seems suddenly different rather than finally revealed, the entire narrative architecture collapses. Drews must show us that both versions are authentically Catherine, that the janitor disguise is conscious performance, while the Warlord Queen is truth emerging rather than transformation occurring. The physical embodiment of this duality requires precise calibration. In janitor mode, Catherine's body language must communicate intentional diminishment, shoulders slightly rounded to appear less threatening, gaze often lowered to signal deference, movements efficient but not commanding. But underneath this performed humility, Drews must show tension, the physical cost of restraint. Watch for micro moments, jaw tightening when insults land, hands briefly clenching before relaxing, a flicker across the eyes that shows Catherine registering everything, even as she appears to accept mistreatment passively. These physical tells are crucial because they signal to audiences that Catherine is choosing this response, rather than being incapable of other responses. When the revelation comes, and Catherine drops the disguise, the physical transformation must be immediate, but not magical. Drews would need to straighten her spine, lift her chin, allow her natural height to read as dominance rather than apologetic presence. Her eye contact shifts from avoidant to direct, holding gazes until others look away. Her voice likely drops in register, less, deferential softness, more command authority. But crucially, this isn't Catherine becoming someone new. It's Catherine stopping the performance of smallness she'd been maintaining. The actor's challenge is making both versions feel authentically rooted in the same psychological core. The emotional restraint required for Catherine's character is perhaps the most demanding element of the performance. When the Grant family mocks her, Drews cannot play pure victimization, or the audience loses respect for Catherine. She cannot play secret smugness, or the humiliation loses its emotional impact. Instead, she must show genuine hurt managed through extraordinary self-control. Catherine feels the insults, but won't give her tormentors the satisfaction of visible reaction. This requires acting technique that accesses real emotional vulnerability while simultaneously showing the character's capacity to contain and control that vulnerability. It's performing feeling and performing the suppression of feeling simultaneously, making both visible to audiences while keeping them invisible to other characters in the scene. The moments with Grace require a different performance texture entirely. Here, Catherine isn't performing humility for strategic reasons. She's genuinely soft with her sister, protective and loving. Drews must show the contrast between Catherine with Grace, authentic tenderness, and Catherine, with Grant's performed deference. This differentiation reveals character depth. Catherine isn't uniformly tough or uniformly humble. She's contextually adaptive. With Grace, she can access vulnerability because Grace is safe. With the Grants, vulnerability is strategic liability, so she armors herself even within the janitor disguise. The supporting performances are equally crucial to the drama's effectiveness. The actress playing Grace must walk a difficult line, showing someone genuinely loving toward her sister, while also somewhat oblivious to the sacrifice Catherine makes by enduring humiliation. Grace isn't villainous in her obliviousness, but she's also not entirely innocent. The performance must show someone so focused on her own celebration and relationship that she doesn't fully register her sister's degradation, which is psychologically realistic but requires nuanced acting to avoid making Grace simply unlikable. Tony Grant and his family members, particularly Allison, the sister-in-law, get to indulge in villain performances. The pleasure of playing people audiences will love to hate. But there's a craft challenge here too. They must be cruel in ways that feel socially realistic rather than cartoonishly evil. Their mockery of Catherine should have the polished cruelty of actual wealthy people dismissing service workers. Casual contempt delivered with smiles, insults wrapped in false concern, dominance asserted through tone and body language rather than overt aggression. If these performances go too broad, they become camp villains, and the drama loses its grounding in recognizable class dynamics. If played with the right calibration of entitlement and casual cruelty, they become chillingly familiar. Point. The betrayal scene, Tony turning on Grace, requires tonal precision from the actor playing Tony. This is the moment when he shifts from dismissive but socially appropriate to overtly cruel. The performance must show what was perhaps always underneath his charm, contempt for Grace's origins, satisfaction in having power over her, willingness to humiliate publicly. This revelation of character requires the actor to have been planting seeds of his true nature earlier, micro-expressions of contempt, possessive rather than affectionate touching, tone that sounds loving but carries edge. So the betrayal feels inevitable rather than arbitrary. Voice work becomes particularly significant in Catherine's dual performance. As the janitor, her voice likely stays in higher registers, uses more tentative phrasing, includes verbal deference markers. Sorry, excuse me, if you don't mind. As the Warlord Queen revealed, her voice would drop. Sentences become declarative rather than questioning, words chosen for precision and impact rather than politeness. Drews must make both vocal presentations feel authentic to the same person. The janitor voices Catherine, adapting to context, not Catherine faking an accent or completely different identity. The vocal shift in Revelation is about dropping adaptation and allowing her natural authority to sound. The costume does significant work that the performance must honor. The janitor's uniform is simultaneously disguise and psychological weight Catherine carries. When Drews wears it, she must show someone conscious of how others are reading this costume, someone who chose to wear it despite knowing the social consequences. The uniform can't be treated as neutral clothing. It's armor of a particular kind, invisibility cloak that Catherine deployed intentionally. When she presumably changes or simply reveals her identity while still wearing it, the performance must show the costume losing its power. Same clothing, completely different meaning, because context shifted. Micro-expressions during the humiliation sequence separate competent from exceptional performance. Drews has opportunities for subtle facial work that communicates Catherine's internal experience to camera's audiences while remaining invisible to the Grant family characters. A slight tightening around the eyes when someone delivers a particularly cruel joke, nostrils flaring briefly before she controls her breathing, jaw muscles flexing as she literally bites back response. These tiny physical tells create dramatic irony. We see her restraint and control, which makes us respect her, while the Grants see only someone passively accepting mistreatment, which makes them comfortable escalating their cruelty. The revelation scene is the performance's climax, where everything must coalesce. However it's staged, whether Catherine makes a phone call that brings military personnel, or her identity spreads through recognition, or she simply states who she is, Drews must show transformation that isn't transformation. Catherine doesn't become powerful in this moment, she stops hiding power. The performance challenge is showing the mask dropping, the performance ending, the real Catherine emerging, who was there all along but suppressed. This requires the actor to have been playing suppression the entire time, showing us someone holding back, so that release reads as revelation rather than sudden character shift. The aftermath scenes, if they exist, require yet another performance layer. Catherine, dealing with having revealed herself, processing what this means for her relationship with Grace, possibly showing vulnerability now that the strategic necessity for armor has passed. This would be Drews' opportunity to show the cost of Catherine's double life, the exhaustion of constant vigilance, perhaps even regret about how revelation changes everything. These moments, if handled with emotional authenticity, elevate the drama from simple revenge fantasy to character study about the price of protection and power. The ensemble performance dynamics also matter. The actors must calibrate their performances in relationship to each other. The Grant's cruelty must be sufficient to justify Catherine's response. Grace's love must be genuine enough that we understand Catherine's protective drive. The power differential between Catherine and everyone else must be visually and vocally clear once revealed. This requires either strong direction or experienced actors who understand how to create dramatic hierarchy through performance choices. Okay, what distinguishes effective performance in this format from prestige drama is efficiency. There's no time for subtle character development across hours of screen time. Every gesture, expression, vocal choice must communicate immediately and clearly. This demands different skills than naturalistic performance. It's heightened realism, where emotions are larger, physical expression is clearer, subtext becomes text quickly. Drews and the supporting cast must embrace this heightened mode without tipping into camp, finding the sweet spot where melodrama reads as emotionally authentic rather than ridiculous. The viral success of My Sister is the Warlord Queen across platforms like YouTube, Reel Short, and Dailymotion reveals something crucial about contemporary audience: hunger for specific emotional experiences. These platforms' algorithms reward content that generates immediate engagement views that don't drop off, comments, shares, repeat watches. The drama's spread suggests it's providing something audiences actively want to experience multiple times and recommend to others. Understanding why requires examining the psychological payoffs the narrative delivers and how viewing becomes communal experience through comment sections and social sharing. Audiences who have worked service jobs, experienced class condescension, or been underestimated based on appearance find deep satisfaction in watching Catherine's revelation. The drama offers vicarious experience of perfect revenge. The moment when everyone who dismissed you realizes they were catastrophically wrong and you have power to make them pay for their dismissal. Real life rarely provides such clean vindication. Slights go unpunished. Cruelty faces no consequences. Catherine's story satisfies a desire for justice that reality frustrates, providing emotional resolution viewers can't access in their actual lives. The comment sections on platforms hosting the drama reveal patterns in how audiences process and share the experience. Common comment types include identification statements, "I worked retail, and customers treated me exactly like this." Anticipation expressions, "I can't wait for them to find out who she really is." And satisfaction declarations, "This is so satisfying to watch." These comments aren't just reactions, they're ways of processing the emotional experience through articulation, and they create community among viewers who share similar desires for stories where class hierarchy gets disrupted and the powerful, pretending to be powerless, get vindication. The repeat viewing behavior the drama generates comes from how revelation scenes function differently on rewatch. First viewing, anxiety and anticipation about when Catherine will reveal herself and what will happen. Subsequent viewings, pleasure of dramatic irony, watching the Grant family condemn themselves while knowing what's coming, appreciating Catherine's restraint with full context about what she's restraining. This shift from suspense to irony provides different emotional rewards, making the content rewatchable in ways that pure, surprise-based narratives aren't. The sharing behavior, viewers recommending the drama to friends, posting clips on social media, creating reaction videos, indicates the content serves social bonding functions. Recommending, "My sister," is the Warlord queen to someone becomes a way of signaling shared values about class justice, appreciation for protective family relationships, or desire for wish fulfillment narratives. The drama becomes conversation starter, shared cultural reference point, way of identifying others who enjoy similar emotional experiences. In fragmented media landscape where everyone consumes different content, finding something mutually enjoyed creates connection. The demographics attracted to this narrative likely skew toward people with service industry experience, those from working class backgrounds who've experienced upward mobility, and anyone who feels the gap between how they're perceived and who they actually are. But the appeal crosses demographic boundaries because underestimation is nearly universal experience. Most people have felt invisible or dismissed at some point. The drama taps into this common experience while providing fantasy resolution, sudden, dramatic vindication that most people never receive. The parasocial relationship viewers develop with Catherine is also significant. She becomes aspirational figure, not because viewers literally want to be warlord queens, though some might, but because she represents capacity to protect loved ones, absolutely, to have power sufficient to prevent harm, to never be vulnerable to others' cruelty because you command resources that make you invulnerable. This is fantasy of ultimate security, of having enough power that no one can hurt you or yours. For audiences navigating precarious economic circumstances, job insecurity, or inability to protect family members from various harms, Catherine offers fantasy of sufficient power to eliminate vulnerability entirely. The way audiences engage with Grace's character reveals interesting psychology. Some viewers defend her. She didn't know what Catherine sacrificed, while others criticize her obliviousness. She should have defended her sister more. This debate about Grace's responsibility and awareness becomes proxy for conversations about gratitude, family obligation, and whether protected people owe acknowledgement to their protectors, even if they don't know protection occurred. The drama activates these conversations without resolving them, creating space for audience processing of their own family dynamics through Catherine and Grace's relationship. The Grant family hatred unites viewers in collective moral judgment. Comment sections often include variations of, "They deserve what's coming," or "I can't wait to see their faces when they realize." This shared animosity toward clear villains creates community feeling. Viewers bond through collective anticipation of villain punishment. The drama provides socially acceptable target for anger, wealthy bullies who deserve comeuppance, allowing audiences to experience aggression and revenge, desire without guilt, because targets are presented as unambiguously deserving. The platform-specific engagement patterns also matter. On YouTube, viewers can easily skip ahead to revelation scenes for quick satisfaction hits, and analytics likely show these moments have highest rewatch rates. On Real Short, the episodic format, if it exists, would create cliffhanger engagement where viewers must return for next segment to get resolution. On Daily Motion, the full-length version allows binge viewing that creates different pacing experience. Each platform shapes how audiences engage with and experience the narrative differently. The creation of fan content reaction videos, analysis threads, things I noticed on rewatch, posts, indicates active rather than passive viewership. Audiences aren't just consuming the drama, they're using it as raw material for their own creative expression and community participation. This active engagement is what algorithms reward, creating viral spread that introduces the drama to new audiences who then join the conversation cycle. The content becomes self-sustaining through viewer participation in creating secondary content. The psychological appeal of the hidden identity trope specifically relates to desire for being truly known. Catherine hiding her identity represents universal experience of feeling that others don't see who you really are, that you're performing an acceptable version of self while authentic self remains hidden. The revelation fantasy is about being finally, completely seen and having that seeing result in recognition of your value rather than rejection. This speaks to deep psychological need for authentic recognition, wanting to be known truly and still be valued. The drama also activates psychology around family loyalty and protective instincts. Viewers who have siblings, children, or found family members, they'd do anything to protect experience. Catherine's motivation viscerally. Her willingness to endure humiliation for Grace's sake resonates with anyone who has ever prioritized loved ones' well-being over their own dignity. This creates emotional identification that makes Catherine's eventual revelation feel like our own vindication. We've suffered with her, so we celebrate with her when she stops suffering. The wish fulfillment around consequences for wealthy cruelty addresses real social frustration. In actual society, wealthy people who treat service workers badly rarely face repercussions. Economic power insulates them from accountability. The drama corrects this injustice through fantasy, providing emotional satisfaction that reality denies. For audiences frustrated by visible inequality and lack of accountability for privileged people's behavior, Catherine's revenge becomes symbolic victory over systemic unfairness, even though it's fictional. The viewing experience also provides emotional regulation opportunities. Feeling powerless in your actual life? Watch Catherine exercise ultimate power. Frustrated by being underestimated? Watch someone who was underestimated destroy those who dismissed her. Angry about class inequality? Watch working-class origins defeat inherited wealth. The drama becomes emotional release valve, providing catharsis for feelings that audiences may have difficulty processing or expressing in their daily lives. This functional emotional work the narrative performs explains its appeal beyond simple entertainment. My Sister is the Warlord Queen exists within a rapidly evolving ecosystem of short-form mobile dramas that represent significant shift in content production and distribution. Platforms like ReelShort, FlexTV, and similar services are creating new market for episodic content optimized for mobile viewing, typically running 60-90 seconds per episode or presented as consolidated longer pieces. This format challenges traditional television and film structures, creating narrative grammar that prioritizes emotional intensity over extended development, clear moral frameworks over ambiguity, and immediate satisfaction over delayed gratification. The hidden identity subgenre within this ecosystem is particularly robust. Similar titles proliferate across platforms. Stories of CEOs disguised as janitors, billionaires, pretending to be poor, powerful figures hiding among ordinary people, all building toward revelation scenes where hidden power gets unveiled and those who showed contempt face consequences. My Sister is the Warlord Queen distinguishes itself through the sisterly protection angle and the gendered element of female military power. But it's clearly operating within established formula that audiences have demonstrated appetite for. The proliferation of these narratives indicates they're serving specific psychological and cultural needs that current media landscape is particularly positioned to fulfill. The production economics of short dramas enable different creative possibilities than traditional film or television. Lower budgets and faster production timelines mean platforms can experiment with many titles, keeping what performs well and abandoning what doesn't. This creates evolutionary pressure toward formats and narratives that generate immediate engagement. My Sister is the Warlord Queen succeeds in this environment because it delivers clear emotional payoffs quickly. Within minutes, viewers understand the premise, identify heroes and villains, and anticipate satisfying resolution. This efficiency is adaptive advantage in attention economy, where viewers make staying or leaving decisions constantly. The casting of Samantha Drews in the lead role reflects a merging star system in short drama space. Unlike traditional film and television where actors build reputations over years through selective projects, short drama actors can become recognizable through sheer volume of content and platform algorithms recommending their other work. If Drews delivers compelling performance as Catherine, viewers who enjoyed My Sister is the Warlord Queen will seek out her other projects, creating pathway to sustained career within this ecosystem even if mainstream film and television industries don't recognize her. This represents democratization of acting careers. Performers can build audiences directly through platform visibility, rather than waiting for traditional gatekeepers to grant opportunities. Number U. The international nature of short drama platforms also shapes content. While My Sister is the Warlord Queen appears to be produced in English for Western audiences, similar formats dominate Chinese and Korean markets where short drama consumption is even more established. The cross-pollination of storytelling techniques and popular tropes between these markets creates global narrative grammar, where certain story structures, hidden identity revealed, contract marriage developing into real love, historical figure reincarnated in modern times appear across languages and cultures. Catherine's story could be easily adapted to different cultural contexts while maintaining core emotional mechanics. The comment-driven engagement model these platforms employ creates feedback loop between audience response and content production. If My Sister is the Warlord Queen generates substantial engagement, high completion rates, comment volume, sharing behavior, the platform algorithm promotes it more aggressively while producers note which elements resonated. Future productions might emphasize similar elements: protective sibling relationships, class warfare themes, female characters wielding traditionally masculine power. The audience essentially votes with their attention and engagement for what content gets made, creating more democratic, though also potentially homogenizing content ecosystem than traditional top-down production models. Coming. The evolution toward longer form short dramas, 20-45 minutes versus ultra-short episodes, 60-90 seconds, represents ongoing experimentation with optimal length. My Sister is the Warlord Queen appears available in both episodic and consolidated formats, allowing viewers to choose their preferred consumption pattern. This flexibility is competitive advantage. Platforms can serve audiences who want quick satisfaction hits and those who prefer more sustained, narrative immersion with same content restructured for different delivery. Catherine, as character template, has significant influence, potential on future productions. Her specific combination of attributes, supremely competent in male-dominated sphere, motivated by family protection rather than personal ambition, willing to hide her power for strategic purposes, capable of ruthless action when provoked, creates archetype that other narratives will likely iterate on. We can anticipate future short dramas featuring similar protagonists: the female CEO disguised as intern, the legendary doctor pretending to be nurse, the tech genius working as support staff. The formula works because it combines gender role subversion with class performance and delayed vindication, hitting multiple psychological satisfaction points simultaneously. The sustainability of this content ecosystem faces questions. Can audiences maintain appetite for similar narrative formulas indefinitely, or will fatigue set in requiring innovation? The short drama format's efficiency means individual titles matter less than overall volume. Viewers can burn through content rapidly and always need more. This creates content hunger that platforms must continually feed, likely through combination of formula repetition, giving audiences emotional experiences they know they enjoy, and periodic innovation, offering fresh variations to prevent complete staleness. The technological infrastructure enabling this ecosystem is also evolving. Platform algorithms get better at matching content to viewers likely to engage with it. Production tools become more accessible, lowering barriers to entry for creators. Distribution channels multiply as social media platforms add longer video capabilities. This technological evolution favors short drama format. It's easier to produce 20 minutes of content than 2-hour film. easier to test multiple concepts and abandon failures, easier to build audience through algorithmic recommendation than through traditional marketing. These structural advantages suggest short drama ecosystem will continue expanding rather than remaining niche phenomenon. The critical reception of short dramas like My Sister Is the Warlord Queen remains mostly separate from traditional film criticism institutions. These works aren't reviewed in major publications, don't appear in festival lineups, don't get considered for traditional awards. This creates parallel entertainment universe, where content succeeds or fails based purely on audience engagement metrics rather than critical approval. This separation has advantages. Creators can focus on audience satisfaction without worrying about critical standards that might conflict with popular appeal. But it also means less critical evaluation of the craft, less documentation of the format's evolution, less cultural legitimacy despite massive viewership numbers. The future trajectory likely involves continued genre specialization. Just as traditional television developed distinct genres, procedural crime dramas, sitcoms, medical dramas, short drama platforms are developing subgenres with their own conventions and audience expectations. Hidden identity reveals, contract relationships, historical time travel, supernatural romance. Each develops distinct narrative grammar and attracts specific audience segments. My Sister Is the Warlord Queen participates in solidifying hidden identity conventions while adding variations through its sisterly protection emphasis and military power specifics. The monetization models also shape content evolution. If platforms rely on advertising, they optimize for content that keeps viewers watching longer to see more ads. If they use subscription models, they optimize for content that converts free viewers to paying subscribers and retains those subscribers. If they employ pay-per-episode models, they optimize for cliffhangers that make viewers purchase next episode. My Sister Is the Warlord Queen succeeds in multiple monetization contexts because its core satisfaction, the revelation and vindication, works whether you encounter it through ads, subscription binge, or episodic purchase. This versatility increases its value to platforms and makes the template attractive for replication. Looking toward 2026 and beyond, the short drama ecosystem will likely expand in production volume, diversify in narrative experimentation while maintaining successful formula cores, and increasingly influence traditional media as proven storytelling techniques migrate between formats. Catherine Blackwood's story, The Warlord Queen in Janitor's Disguise, will likely spawn numerous variations and iterations, becoming recognizable archetype the way Reluctant Chosen One or Enemies to Lovers function in other genres. The specific title may fade from memory, but the emotional experience it provides, watching hidden power revealed and cruelty punished, witnessing protective love overcome class contempt, experiencing vindication by proxy, will continue finding new narrative vehicles to deliver similar satisfactions to audiences seeking these specific psychological payoffs. The democratization of content production and distribution that short drama platforms represent challenges. Traditional media power structures while creating new gatekeepers, algorithms, platform policies with their own biases and limitations. My Sister Is the Warlord Queen succeeds in this environment because it understands what algorithmic recommendation rewards: immediate emotional engagement, clear narrative trajectory, satisfying resolution, and delivers those elements efficiently. Future creators studying successful titles like this will extract lessons about emotional economy, narrative compression, and psychological satisfaction that will shape next generation of short-form storytelling. The format is still evolving, still discovering its possibilities and limitations, still figuring out what stories work best in this compressed time frame and mobile-optimized structure. Catherine's story is one data point in ongoing experiment about how humans create and consume narrative in digital age.